Hello, BookTube. Um, I'm here on a really hot Wednesday. Ziggy's joining me. Come on, up, up. Ziggy's here with me. Calm down. I haven't posted in a while. I just wanted to catch up. I've been working hard. You never anticipate what my schedule is like, not at this stage of my life. But, no. I've ended up with a lot of books over a short period of time. And I wanted to share what I've been reading and what I found, because there's a very thin line between these things. Starting with Ray Bradbury. I've been reading short stories because I found these matching little mass market paperbacks of S's for Space and Medicine for Melancholy, and currently in the middle of a Pillar of Fire, which is just sadistic. it's a lot of fun. It's just a rampage of sorts. And, but I have trouble thinking linearly, so I end up. I'm also in the middle of reading The Martian Chronicles on my iPad, because it's my best friend really loves Ray Bradbury, and that's her favorite book of his, and so I'm too excited and end up picking up when this is nearby. Just end up start reading it, or I like to bring it to work with me to read in my downtime, because I can relate to the next book that I've been reading, which I had found was Middlemarch by George Eliot. I'm a little over 2/3 of the way through. I have to take my time in this because it's really wonderful. It's George Eliot's writing is staunch, sober, articulate, direct, but elegant. With it's the beauty of her allegory is timeless. There are so many sections of this that are addressed to be applied to all of human history through the lens and context of our characters. It's really wonderful. I take a lot of time away from the book reflecting on it, and, but at this point I'm excited to spend a good deal of time finishing the story with the romantic arcs that are developing in it. This little, I haven't always been so happy with the Signet Classics paperbacks, but in terms of something that you could beat up, because I would be so happy to read this book again, and I'd be happy to read this until it falls apart, because it's such a little book with. Anyways, I've found a lot of things specifically where I found these paperbacks and such, where at my library. And my public library has a little bookshop that the Akron Summit County Public Library has a little bookshop that sells hardcovers for $2 and paperback books for $1, with exceptions with like rare books or just things that they sometimes will mark up a little bit. So what I found today, consistent with the theme of Ray Bradbury, for this one was $2. A collection of short stories by Ray Bradbury. I'm happy I found this because I think I'm going to be able to give as a gift to my friend who really loves Ray Bradbury some of the other short story collections I've already found. I'm going to keep this big whopper of a book, you know. The thing that really surprised me is that A Pillar of Fire isn't in this, and which is interesting because I was, you know, talking to my friend about it and about how I wanted to share it with her. So I couldn't end up giving this to her if I wanted her to read Pillar of Fire. I was like, here's a bunch of short stories. Like, there's 100 of them in here. And, not that I'm complaining. I just didn't realize how prolific Ray Bradbury is. I'm excited after I finish reading Martian Chronicles to read for the first time Fahrenheit 451. And also I want to read Something Wicked This Way Comes. As well as many of these short stories as I can consume. They're pretty easy to read, but they're thematically kind of similar to the structure of George Orwell almost, where he comes up with these tales that are allegorical to certain segments of the human condition and to human history, and runs with it and makes a whole world and has the characters explore it. Where Orwell was limited to a couple of mid-tempo allegorical, almost heavy-handed, I would say, metaphors. Not it seems Bradbury has the same style in his science fiction of really pushing the line of allegory and having his characters explore it. Anyways, what else I found at the library bookstore today was I spent a little much, as I spent $7 on this, but a hardcover Breakfast of Champions. Really just because, I mean, yellow's my favorite color. The dust jacket's in great condition. I enjoy this book. It has probably my favorite part of the Kilgore Trout storyline that goes throughout Kurt Vonnegut's novels, where Kilgore Trout's novels drive a car salesman insane, and he, Ziggy, no. He just, Ziggy, come on, up, kiss. The chaos ensues. Needless to say, chaos ensues. What else I've gotten from the library bookstore? I was very excited to find. I had found before a brief, like a small section of a large volume collection of Geoffrey Chaucer, but then I found this large. Look at this. It's behind my head. Oh, well, you can't see it behind my head, but in front of my head, I can't see it in front of my head. It's like a seesaw. Anyways, the complete poetry and prose of Geoffrey Chaucer, which I was very impressed that it fits in. You know, this isn't so big. This, especially compared to the last thing that I had, was multi-volume. I'm excited because it looks like someone already lived with this book. You know, there's a good deal of annotations throughout and remarks. I'm excited to. I'm not quite sure. Like this so far, my attempts at the Canterbury Tales have been met with struggles of comprehension, and frequently I'll have a hang up on a specific word or phrase, and I don't like to go on without feeling like I understood something, and um, it feels like Chaucer will go on before I've understood what's happening, and then I don't understand the scene or the turn of phrase that he's using. Um, so I almost wonder if I'll need to read a more modern adaptation, if not side by side first. Um, I don't know, but I enjoy a lot of the specific word combinations that I found so far. It's very he must have been a very clever man, and it's fun to read the specific adaptations of the English language. Um, right now, there's definitely some sort of simplified English language in use that I'm certainly a part of, and but reading older authors and writers and thinkers, they have a way of using specific. It must be because they knew multiple languages too. Using specific words to hinge a sentence in a certain way, or to have some compound thought hinge upon certain words now that have less meaning individually. Um, I should have brought a specific example. That's probably something I'll talk about again, but with specific books I'm reading, like if I do a post-reading recap of Middlemarch, I'll probably talk a lot about that. Some other things I've gotten from the library store. I found another copy of The Bluest Eye, which is wonderful because I lent out a copy I had to my coworker, where my coworker, I work at a Circle K. I work at a gas station now, which is a lot of fun. Anyways, I lent him. He said he was interested in reading because I like that I can read there. No. I like that I can read there, and no one really bothers me too much as long as I help the customers. But anyway, my coworker said, it's really cool that you're into reading. I would like it if maybe you could lend me a book or recommend something to me. So I gave him my copy of The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I ended up finding this for $1 within the next couple days, and was really happy about it because you don't always see Toni Morrison. I've been lucky enough to thrift a couple copies for really cheap prices because I'll find them at like the Salvation Army or the Goodwill or something. But this is a really fun book, I think, for an American male to read. To try to understand the perspective of a young black girl is really difficult to, and the way that Toni Morrison portrays mental health in general in this book is really, I felt like it was a good start to, and not necessarily a good start, but like a good beginning, or so, to reading something that you could revisit for the rest of your life, and understand the troubles of a youth in America, and what another community might feel, I guess. It's about time I reread this. It's been a good while now, but so I'm happy to have my own copy with. And anyways, I'm happy to have offloaded that one because this one has no notes in it. The other one I had had like pen markings. I'm very particular about what kind of markings I like in my books because some of them really get in the way. Like if someone doesn't use a straight edge, It's not. I don't really like it. I get picky. I found a copy of The Pearl. This was a really quick read, but it's by John Steinbeck, and it's pretty great. It feels like if you had a conservative friend, this would be their favorite book. I don't know, but it's also really fun. There's a lot of action in it, which I wasn't really expecting. I like this little cover. It makes it look like it's just like a romance. And if they really are holding the biggest pearl ever found, if it's in the palm of his hand, the pearl of the world. I don't know, but the theme of this book is that he finds a fortune and his community turns on him in order to fulfill their dreams. And so all that happens is his family is ruined. It's it's worth reading again. It's worth reading a first time too. So it's the second Steinbeck novel I've read, and I like the way he writes. It's pretty simple enough, you know, but it's got a lot of power to it. Authoritative. Other things I found at my library bookstore. This was $2. This big old copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. Check out that. That's now the thickest book I own. But it's good. It's good copy. There's no labeling, no markings. Not even at the beginning. Sometimes you'll get it. Well, so someone dripped their dinner on it, but that's what happens when you get these. This one wasn't even stamped, but this was a library copy. I found, when I was really excited, also for $2, the collected prose. Well, not collected, but no, I think it might be the complete, because it says the poetry and short stories of Dorothy Parker, which is what you need at Dorothy Parker. That's that. Right when I got home, I sat down and read through Big Blonde, which was a pretty cool story. One of the thoughts I had afterward, that if she, I know Dorothy Parker was famously struggled to write a novel, and if Big Blonde feels like it could have been in connection to The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, like she could have made it into a towering figure as equivalent to that in American culture for emo people. You know, like but for the fact that it's a short story and doesn't fit on its own in with a breath on a shelf, you know, it's fallen by the wayside. I've never heard anyone talk about Big Blonde, but it's really a great story. I've read a couple of her other stories. I've read some poems out of here. I like, there's some poems that are basically literary criticism, which is fun. Speaking of poems and stuff, I ended up with these two things, which were also $2. Any hardcover there is $2, like I said. So it's the poems Byron, Keats, and Shelley, in a pretty substantial, decently well made hardcover. They have another version now, which is in the what are these things called? The International Collectors Library version, which I might get because I mean, look at this. This part's already falling apart. I think I might have rushed my purchase of these hardcovers. They're called the Programmed Classics. But this one is this is my only Emerson now, besides what I have in my poetry collections. But this is essays and journals. I'm excited to read this along with Montaigne. I'm only just now getting more into like essays and nonfiction, and because I was before using I was using Storygraph in particular, but after very briefly using Goodreads to track my reading, to say like, okay, how many books am I reading? I wonder how many. So it was a lot less sexy to read a short story or a poem or an essay or just like journal entries. And don't worry. I'm just having fun reading whatever I can now. I read this biography of Thelonious Monk. I was really happy to find a copy. This wasn't at the library. This was at a place called the Snowball Bookshop. And it just changed hands. It had won an award recently under the ownership of the old owner that had owned it for decades. I think she said her name is Linda Snowball, which is a wonderful name. And there were cats in the store, which my friend at the time was a little upset about that because they were allergic to cats, which is a valid argument. You know, you can't really change that about yourself. It's probably the biggest bookstore I know in the area. Well, it's pretty big. It's got this whole basement that's the same size as the whole floor plan, and it's not always open because not everyone wants to go down there, but you can just ask to go down, and there's all sorts of old stuff down there, and I'd really, it's hard to find the time, you know, well, the first time I went there, I wasn't planning to spend about 3 hours, you know, but just looking upstairs, you know, takes long enough. Anyways, this was a really fun read. It casts Thelonious Monk in a really great light. It shows him as really hardworking, really loving of his family, really, really supporting of his kids, like the extents he went to as a father, like letting his kids pick their own shoes and stuff at the store. No, don't make noises like that. Nobody likes to hear that. I found also a copy of short stories by John Updike. I almost called him Jonathan. I'm sure that might be his name. But The Afterlife and Other Short Stories. I haven't gotten to this yet, but I'm excited about reading short stories, and I'm excited to dip my toes into the oeuvre of John Updike. If anyone has any recommendations about his works, maybe where to start, whether it's short stories or I'm certain I'll read the title one. I might as well. read what's on the title of the book. So if someone's like, "Hey, what's that?" I'm like, "Oh, you mean The Afterlife by John Updike?" But there's a whole bunch of other stories in the book. So at this point, well, here. Another thing I've been reading in terms of like shorter stuff, I got the 2-volume. This is just one of them. I don't have the other one in here, but I got the 2-volume collection of Plutarch's Lives, Parallel Lives, and I've been reading through some of these. They're pretty fun to read. I read Themistocles, I read Alexander, and I'm reading the life of Kaiser. I don't know how to say. I think I'm just gonna say Caesar. Yeah, but it's pretty fun to get some context. I've only recently begun to grasp the large boundary between my current self and the knowledge I would like to acquire, and things like authors like Plutarch are such a good way for me to shoot arrows into that wall of my ignorance and and chip away at the armor that keeps me from understanding simple parts of historic events. Another thing I did to get books, to end up with all of these books, was I looked on Craigslist. I was on there for no more than 5 minutes. It must have been no more than 5 minutes. I started on the free section. I was just looking for bookshelves, which is I think, a very humorous way to get into this situation, where you're looking for bookshelves because you have too many books and you don't have anywhere to put them, and you end up finding a free offer of a large amount of books on literary criticism and general classic literature. And they say they've got boxes full and that they don't want them anymore and they want to get rid of them. If someone can pick them up, and it's not too far from me. And when I was in the area later in the week, I stopped by, and I guess a lot of it's from the Canton County Public Library. I got a lot of books. There's 3 boxes worth of books. There's 2 things that would take up whole shelves, probably. 2 series of collections, where one of them is McGill Masterplots. Here's just 2 of them, where these old style, but I've got a whole lot of them here. They'd fill up a whole shelf like this. I have all of them except the second one. If anyone finds the second one of these, the McGill Masterplots, I'd pay you very little money for it. Yeah, so there's those which are kind of fun. I when I first saw them, I was like trying to figure out what they were, and I saw that it's alphabetical by title. So I read through the one of Don Quixote, and it was pretty fun. It was a fun reminder. It was a fun reminder of all the things that weren't mentioned, is kind of how it felt. Like to read what the general line of what happens in the plot is a fun way for my brain to be like, this doesn't mention this, and this, which otherwise I wouldn't have necessarily been so close to. My neurons near there wouldn't have been firing. if I weren't getting about 80% of the way there with this generalization. Um, so that's pretty fun. It will probably help for like criticism. Like if I'm reading an essay and it's like, oh, this is on a book I read 2 years ago, maybe I'll brush up by just reading through the master plot of the story. Be like, oh yeah, I forgot about, like, like one thing I think that I'm sure, well, maybe I won't because it was so striking to me, but I'm sure it's so easy to forget that in the Iliad that Achilles is chased by a river. Like, those kind of details just kind of disappear over time. The great part of the Trojan War where the river struck out, like, that part goes away. Things are very similar in the Bible where you're like, what? In terms of literary criticism, and there's a mixture of nonfiction and there is like older literary fiction, not necessarily older, but like before my time, you know. Not they might not necessarily be classics. Like this is stories by Odie Lindsay. We Come to Our Senses. Here's I don't know, but something I'm gonna check into. Byron in Love, which I'm actually interested in. I'm interested in the life of Lord Byron. He's a elusive figure, it seems. Here's a novel, In the Country of Men, by Hisham Matar. I've never heard of this. If you've heard of this, please let me know. Here's the other things. One thing, here. Every Day is for the Thief, Teju Cole. Let me read, here's a blurb by Salman Rushdie. We know him, don't we? Every Day is for the Thief, by turns funny, mournful, and acerbic, offers a portrait of Nigeria in which anger, perhaps the most natural response to the often lamentable state of affairs there, is somehow muted and deflected by the author's deep engagement with the country, a profoundly disenchanted love. Teju Cole is among the most gifted writers of his generation. The amount of times I've heard that sentence. X is among the most gifted writers of their generation. But considering young people, here's a picture of the author. And his Adidas tracksuit. Stylish. Here's another book that came with it. This shorter 4th edition of the Norton Anthology of Poetry. I don't know why you would want a shorter anthology. Like if you're going to get an anthology, why not have it be just like a little bit thicker, you know? It's like an anthology. Why would you get a shorter anthology? I don't know, but it's got a lot of good stuff in here. I'm ready to take notes on poems. Especially, I like the idea of the longer poems. Like, for instance, today I picked up this cheap little copy of Evangeline by Longfellow, because I'm just interested in trying to catch up with the classical poems and stuff. Here, I got it. Another box here. Here. Edited by Harry T. Moore, Contemporary American Novelists. these are just essays on contemporary American. Here, I'm in the table of contents. Norman Mailer. Well, that's an essay by Norman Mailer. It's discussions of all sorts of like Jack Kerouac, James Jones, Salinger, Saul Bellow, Bernard Malamud, Mary McCarthy, Eudora Welty, Joseph Heller, James Baldwin. There's two there, James Baldwin. I'm really happy to see that. So it's one of my favorite. There's John Updike. So I'll be able to read a little bit of opinions of John Updike as I'm checking out his work, which I don't know any opinions on him either. I just know that he's kind of mentioned as one of the it looks like I moved my things with books. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Here I am. Anyway, and then there's a lot of these, I ended up with a lot of these old McGill things from this library. The Critical Survey of Long Fiction. I'm excited to use these for all they're worth and decide if I want to keep them or not. Because getting a big box of free books, I'm just hoping I'm not, the schmuck. But I do like that these are essays on just about everyone. There are, I'll flip to it. It's kind of like a Wikipedia entry or encyclopedia entry. Oh my god. It's kind of like my youth shows. And then there's one more thing in this box. I haven't actually looked at this yet, but it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. 19th Century Literature Criticism, Cumulative Index to Volumes 1 and 2. I wonder if I have, okay, hold on. No, I don't have. Okay, so I got the other box. Yeah, so I kind of got a bunch of shit that's not really. Like, for instance, this is an index. And I don't have the actual contents of it. But these are also both cumulative indexes. Golly. Yeah, so these are both cumulative indexes too. I might, who knows what I'll do with these. I'm going to look through them. Going to see what I like. 20th century Russian emigre writers. British and Irish short fiction writers. There's all sorts of things. Writing Well by Donald Hall. I'm interested in this. I'm an aspiring writer, aren't we all? Canons. Edited by Robert von Hallberg. Never heard of this? It's right up my alley. It's the type of stuff I like. Happy to have it. Essays on Literature and Belief by James Wood. That's my type of stuff. Happy to have it. Haven't heard of it though. So this stuff's about Thornton Wilder, an author I'm excited to dip my toes into with Our Town. It's about time I read a play. It's about time I read a play again. The last play I read was Macbeth. I really enjoyed it, but the ending kind of threw me for a loop. I felt like I wasn't smart enough for the ending of Macbeth, but maybe I just need to see it performed, you know? Here's a whole thing on, yeah, just a whole work on Joyce's Dubliners. I'm excited to see how critical this author is. I think there's a lot of fluff in Dubliners. Um, you know, I've only read two Joyce, so I don't have too much of an opinion on it. Freud on war, sex, and neurosis. This is actually just a Sigmund Freud. Yeah, I thought this was criticism of Freud, and I only just now realized that it's authored by him. The new novel in America, the Kafkan mode in contemporary fiction. Nice. Especially, I just got the collected stories and a copy of the trial. So I'm really excited to go through a lot of Kafka. People that look like me usually like Franz Kafka, so I should too. I've read The Metamorphosis, but that's all. It was pretty good. This one's about Flaubert. I haven't read any Flaubert. Here is contemporary American poetry and a cute little penguin thing. Here's when America used to mean, traditional patterns of different cultures. You know, it used to be a melting pot. John Cheever. I've seen his name in a couple of these books. That means I need to check them out. I was really happy to see this copy of a Toni Morrison novel. This is, I think, the second Toni Morrison book that showed up today. God Help the Child. I'm gonna wrap this up here, only for the fact that I just need to use the bathroom. You probably see me rocking around. Thanks for joining me. I'm happy to be back. Have a good day, BookTube.